Hello, and thank you all for coming to attend Dawn's talk this afternoon. My name is Orna, and I'm the current Faculty of Arts and Sciences President in the Student Union, and I have the pleasure of introducing Dawn ahead of her talk today. While I'm currently working as part of the Student Union, I started my Edgehill journey in September 2020 as a musical theatre student, and they were the best 3 years of my life. While I was able to explore my passions and develop new ones, Edgehill granted me the access to do so. In July 2023, I graduated, and as my Edgehill journey came to an end, Dawn's had only just started. I would like to believe Dawn and I are more similar than people believe. While I wish I was CEO of Channel 5, Dawn and I share the same beliefs when it comes to the arts and with a keen and formidable approach towards breaking gendered barriers. It also helps that we are both from Preston as well. I also like to think that Dawn and I chose Edgehill as our institutions for the same reason. It was built and founded on progressive change. And throughout her career, Dawn has been a trailblazer in breaking down gendered barriers, and because of this has not only become a role model for women, but for women in the arts as well. In an industry which has given women a literal platform to elevate their voices, Dawn has used hers to amplify and speak out on a global scale. From starting out in television in the 1980s, Dawn has fought past the archaic sexist systems of television and has found her seat at the table where she has now become a respected member within the media industry. As well as this, as chair of the National Youth Theatre, Dawn is encouraging the youth of today to get actively involved in theatre. As Edgehill Musical Theatre alumni, and a lover of the arts, it makes me exceptionally happy to see the figurehead of my institution to do so. It's a time of uncertainty within the arts. Dawn has been that figurehead, and according to the National Youth Theatre, has amplified the voices of 200,000 young people, and they have benefited from the creative opportunities provided under the guidance of Dawn. Dawn sets out an example of what a true patron should look like. She's a champion among the underfunded, the underappreciated, and the undervalued. Her journey is inspiring, and I'm hoping today that some of you will find pathos and innovation in her words and inspire you to reach the same heights as Dawn has. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Orna, for that introduction. My name, for those of you who don't know, is Matthew Pateman. I'm the head of the Department of English and Creative Arts here at Edgehill, and it's my honour to be in conversation for the next 35-40 minutes or so, after which we'll be opening it up for questions from the floor, ideally from students, but anybody is free to ask. So we'll kick off with a question which I think might appeal to some of the students in the room, where there's a lot of emphasis that we place as a university, quite rightly, on your future employability. What are you going to do? How are you going to get there? As if it's inevitable that you know. And I'm wondering, when you were at university age, did you know what you were going to do? Was your career an inevitability?
No, it certainly wasn't. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for those very generous, kind words. We do. I didn't realise I had a sister, but I do know that. You know that now. And thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come and listen to this conversation. So did I know what I wanted to do? Well, yes, I did, but it didn't happen. So I went to university and didn't do an arts degree at all. I did a really important degree that your Chancellor did, which was geography. And you had a career in arts, but you did a degree in geography. And I did geography quite simply. And I should be very careful. John isn't in the room, is he? Are there any geographers in the room? I thought, okay, it would be an easy degree to do. Give me lots of time to do what I wanted to do, which was get involved in student politics, in writing, giving me the ability to play tennis, all the things that I wanted to do at university that weren't really related to my course. But I also liked geography, seriously, because I was always interested in the urban environment and how societies and how people and how communities work together. So it was a really good general degree, and really, I wasn't sort of exceptional at anything, but I was sort of good enough at everything. So geography worked really, really, really well for me, and actually it served me very well in my career. But what I knew I wanted to go into some form of communication. I was a very angry young woman. I was a card-carrying member of the Labour Party, in fact, of the Socialist Worker Party, and I went to a boys' public school. You can imagine how well that went down in the 70s. Not well at all. I wanted to be either a journalist or a news producer. And when it came to sort of deciding the rounds and applying for jobs in my final year at university, I thought, actually, you know what? I want to be a producer of news and current affairs, because that will facilitate me telling the stories that I think need to be told. So what do you want to do if you want to be a producer? And I have to say, when I started my career, it was nowhere near as competitive as it is now for you. And we were nowhere near as well educated, in my view, as students today. So I thought I'd apply to the BBC. And buggers didn't have me. Anyway, that's why I've never worked at the BBC. I've worked everywhere else, but not at the BBC. And I ended up working in ITV. And I went in as a general trainee initially, which was a really good place to learn all about television. So I was exposed to sort of the finance, the legal side of the business, the technical side of the business, and the creative side of the business, which is what I wanted to do. And my boss was the director of programs, a wonderful man called Andy Allen. And he used to constantly say to me, because I used to have a catch-up with him every other week, well, what do you want to do, Dawn? I want to be a producer in news and current affairs. And basically, didn't allow it to happen. He did not allow it to happen. He said, actually, at the end of the traineeship, you were best in entertainment. We're going to put you in light entertainment. I said, I don't want to be in light entertainment. You're going to do light entertainment, because that's what you're good at. And anyway, so I went in, I was a researcher and then an associate producer on shows that are television classics like blockbusters, Price is Right, $64,000 Question. This is what Central Television in the Midlands produced a lot of these sort of shows. But I never got to being a producer in news and current affairs. In fact, my career from that point has taken all sorts of twists and turns, and I call it my so-called career. It's not been planned. I found things that I enjoyed, and to be honest, when I was at Central Television, I thought I'd be there forever and a day, but people kept offering me other things that were so interesting. I thought, I think I'd quite like to do that. So I only ever applied for one thing, and I wanted to be a producer in news and current affairs. That was the one thing I never did. Right. One thing I never did. So no, basically, is a long answer to your very short question.
A fantastic answer, because I think what it identifies is the fact that even though having an idea is great, having the passion is the more important thing, arguably. Yeah. And a follow-on question from that is, given the range of things that you have done, yes, you must have sort of worked across a range of different sectors and have a lot of experience about the kinds of skills, attributes that employers and different sectors want. Is there a sort of a secret to what a person should have to really be able to get where they need to get to? What are the key attributes that you think make people successful?
Well, it depends on how you define success. Mm-hmm. And I think success is about sort of knowing your own happiness. Find something you're really happy at. Find something actually not even you're really happy at, but something that you love. If you find something you love, then you're going to have a great career, whatever that passion is. Whatever that passion is. But as an employer of a lot of people over a long period of time, I suppose what I've always looked for is people who are interested. People who, because you want folks who've got passion but are interesting, that are curious. I'm going to be, excuse my language. You don't want to work with arseholes, do you? You don't want to be an arsehole. And actually, when I was at Getty Images, we had leadership principles, and one of them was there's no assholes around here, because you can come across people who are really quite difficult sometimes, and you really don't want to work with. So we've always employed that. But the attributes you're looking for are, like I said, passion, kindness. You want somebody who's going to fit into a team. You want somebody who fits into a team. You want somebody who's hardworking, and you can never ever underestimate hard work. If you want to sort of scale anything that you do, if you want to be the best at whatever you do, you've got to work really hard. People who lead organisations, people who are successful, it's not by chance. You've got to work really, really hard. You've got to be very applied. I also look for people who are resilient. is this and most of us, every single one of you in this room, will have experiences that will be unique to you, that will hopefully have given you resilience, because life is not linear, as we all know. It doesn't always work out as you would anticipate, but it's how you deal in those moments of when things get knocked off course or crises that is really important. So again, being able to demonstrate life experience, a bit of experience, I look for from folks that I employ. But you want in the main, because if you work for an organisation, organisations are all about interactions. It's all about how you get on with people. And if you lead an organisation, you're always looking at, okay, who can fit, or actually who doesn't fit, because there's a whole host of body of work now that says you put together people with multiple different competing contradictory skills, because that's how you get best outcomes. But you're looking for interesting, decent, kind people who've got sort of some domain knowledge and potential. You're looking for potential.
And not arseholes.
And not arseholes.
Excellent.
No. Some get in occasionally, but then you get rid of them pretty quickly.
So, accepting that you are not one of those, what would you say is your best attribute, or your best attributes, or the things that have held you in greatest stead?
This sounds like an interview. So, Dawn, why do you think you can do this job? My best attribute? I don't really know. I let other people answer that. Mm-hmm. What people say about me, and I sort of recognise it, is we all have a superpower. Every single one of you have a superpower, something that's unique to you that you are better at or different at to anybody else. And it's about learning what that superpower is. And I suppose if I have a superpower, it's I'm very good at putting teams of people together. And that comes out of, I go back to the person you've heard me mention earlier, Andy Allen, who was my first boss at Central Television. He was a working class Geordie. He was a completely brilliant director of programming at Central. He could have been and done anything. He was naturally a little bit lazy, which doesn't comply with reaching. He could have been anything in television, but didn't really quite want to go necessarily that extra mile to achieve it. But anybody who had any interaction with him knew you were blessed by somebody very special. And he said to me, I remember he said when I first came in as a trainee, you have come into the most amazing industry. It's full of brilliant people, and it really is full of brilliant people. And he said, but don't forget that you're very good too, and always remember, Dawn, to employ the best possible people you can around you, people who are better than you at what you do, because you are going to get the benefit of that. Look and put together the best teams you have, and also put together teams of people who will challenge you, who won't just be a reflection of what you are, which is the natural instinct. We put people around us who we like, who are similar to us. Don't do that. And I did that, and I've always done that, and I think that's what most people who work closely with me would say, is actually put together really good teams of people and you let them get on and do their job. So I believe very firmly in clarity of purpose in an organisation. So what am I here to do? Tell me what you expect of me. What are my, lovely term, KPIs, key performance indicators, but they're quite important. What do you want me to do? Okay. And if you state that and then say, oh, and by the way, if you have problems along the way, if you hit issues, because we all do, nothing ever works out exactly as one would hope, come and talk to me and we'll sort things through. And if you cock up, and we all cock up, believe me, my career is littered with cock-ups. I once gave a speech about the cock-ups I've made, and somebody said to me, I'm amazed that you were ever employed. I go, yeah, well, so was I. Well, but you learn from you learn from those cock-ups. So sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I was just thinking about all the cock-ups I've made. Anyway, so which are numerous and significant. But you're there. You support your teams as well when they don't know the answers to, or something goes wrong. And then you let people get on and do their job. You don't micromanage them. You just say, you know what's required of you, hit a problem, let's have a conversation, we'll celebrate when there's success, and by the way, you'll be rewarded really well. I'm going to pay you really well. I've always believed in paying people in the top quartile, and if you exceed your performance, I'm going to pay you even more money. Now, money is not a sole motivator. If money is your only motivator, you're not necessarily going to have a very happy life. But it's nice to know if you do a really, really good job, there's going to be acknowledged and you're going to be paid for it. And so that's how I've operated, and I would say sort of that is my secret sauce, putting together good teams of people. I should also add that I really like people. I'm infinitely curious about, I mean, you can all become my new best friends, because once I start talking to you, there'll be so much stuff I want to know about you, because you're all so interesting. Genuinely love people, and I think that sort of helps as well. So that's my secret sauce.
I couldn't agree more. Making teams and employing people that are better than you, that's got to be great. In a sense, one of the ways in which you can put teams together is putting an advert out, and people come and you have no idea who they are, you make judgments. But another way of putting teams together is because you know people already, and that obviously comes from networks. And one of the issues I think that many students here might face is that they might not be part of yet a significant level of network, and they might come from backgrounds where those networks don't already exist. So how would you explain or provide ways of trying to overcome the lack of a network? Or a different way of framing that is, how do you make networks?
Well, you make a network in here. You're at university. Now, it's a really good question, actually, because networks are really, really important, and you're making them all the time. Every time you make human contact, you're making networks. And media, and again, I think it really did used to be who you knew. It's not like that to anywhere like that extent now. Because it can't be, because of transparency of how you source and employ folks. But certainly when I started in telly, I only applied for one job, and I was just offered job after job after job. And it came through my networks, through people that you meet, that you impress, that know, that have experienced you. And that's human nature. That is human nature. And I suspect unless you go down a very linear route and you do one thing with one company forever, very unlikely, because centennials, you're going to have at least 8 or 9 jobs, or you're going to be self-employed. Very different employment patterns to when I started started my career. But I'll sort of answer the question by sort of, a few little anecdotes around when I was in television. And again, always told, whenever you can, go listen to people, go connect with clubs, go to, get involved in organisations, show also, because it helps with just your general some knowledge if you are highly engaged with what you do, because once you know 10 people, those 10 people, they know 10 people, suddenly things start to amplify. But getting involved in professional groups, start your own groups. If you haven't got a network, start your own groups of expertise and like-minded interest. And that's just, it literally is an ecosystem. Once it starts, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. And it's sort of amazing where people that you met a long time ago sort of suddenly come back into your life. So it was interesting, because my last major executive role was running Getty Images, CEO of Getty Images. And people said, well, how did you get that job? I said, well, I was approached by a headhunter, and they said, we think you've got the right profile, and by the way, you've been recommended to us. And I said, okay, by whom? It was by a gentleman called Saul Klein. Now, Saul Klein, very, very clever entrepreneur, and he is a venture capitalist. But I got to know him because we were both on a panel for The Guardian. I can't even remember what it was. And he had just created Love Film. And I ended up going on his board because of that. And his uncle was the co-founder of Getty Images, which was founded by Mark Getty and Jonathan Klein. And Saul said, when Jonathan was standing down as chief executive, so I sort of knew you had all of the right attributes that the organisation was looking for. And that was sort of network and serendipitous. And that relationship with Saul was sort of 20 years before I ended up getting this role. It's just amazing how things do turn out. In terms of sort of people you meet. And the other thing I also believe is be very nice to everybody at every level, because you never know who, when you're on the way up, you're going to encounter down the line. So always trying back to the no arsehole rule, but being really kind and generous and curious about those people around you makes a huge difference.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, kindness, generosity, curiosity, maxims for
Networks.
Networks.
Spiders' webs.
Indeedy.
I'm looking over here. There aren't any spiders. There are a few folks in the front row who are obviously remembered it is Halloween today.
See, how can you not love this job? How can you not love this job? Fantastic. So, you've mentioned some of the attributes that you think employers need. You've talked about some of the ways in which you've moved through your career and made your networks and had these sort of moments of serendipity and such like, which have led you to, as Orna was suggesting, these remarkable roles and this fantastic so-called career. What, if any, one of those roles or activities or positions that you've had have you been proudest of, and what would be the reasons behind that?
Probably proudest of Channel 5, to be honest, because I like challenger brands, and I like creating things that are new, and I like putting together teams, and I like doing things that other people don't like doing because they're really difficult, and I like sticking two fingers up to people and say, did it? You didn't think we could do it. Now that reveals something deep, isn't it, and warped about my psyche, that I want to do that, but it's true. And I always like to challenge myself. So Channel 5, because everyone said, well, I'll tell you why. So this gives you a bit of context, and I'll get into the details. So I was at Channel 4 at the time. I was controller of arts and entertainment at Channel 4. I had it in ball, actually. And I was my portfolio was everything from sport to entertainment to movies, to comedy, to arts. It was a fantastic portfolio. Channel 4, in those days, if you got a big hit, everyone was enormously grateful. If you had delivered a turkey, well, it's Channel 4, we're there to experiment. You really could do no wrong. It was glorious, and it was very, very, very creative. And the Channel 5 license, well, there was spectrum that was available. I mean, it's so bizarre, really, because we live in a world of on-demand, and then there was only 4 television channels, and then there was 5 because you could squeeze out a bit of spectrum. Advertisers felt they were being held hostage by ITV and Channel 4. Those were the only 2 places that you could go to get to mass audiences with commercial breaks. So they wanted to squeeze out another commercial channel. I thought, well, this will be interesting. So I went to, and I was in, there was a license process, and I was put in various brown envelopes, names as director of programmes, and I didn't think for one moment that the consortium who approached me were going to get it, were going to win, but they did. And when they did, I knew I had to take the job because I'd taken money in advance to go in that brown envelope, and I'd spent it on re-leading some windows of a church that I lived in. And I couldn't pay the money back, so I was sort of screwed. I had to do this job, even if I loved Channel 4. So I went to my boss, who was Michael Grade, and Michael said, he said, are you really sure about this? I go, yeah, I'm really sure, because I can't take the lead out of my windows, get the money back to pay back, and you ain't going to give me that sign. And he said, well, and he wrote in my leaving card, I hope Channel 5 will go down the pan, but I hope you come up smelling of roses. And his advice to me was, do not do it first time round. Let somebody go in, they'll louse it up, go in second time round and be the hero and sort it out. That's not how I work. I thought, no, I think we can go in and do something different here. And it was a very hard journey. We had no money. When you launch something new, the expectation is it's going to be different or better, or it's going to be better or different. I've got 10% of Channel 4's budget, which is the nearest terrestrial channel to us in size, and I've got to do something that's different. And we worked out what our points of difference were, and we positioned ourselves as modern mainstream, and we were very confident about what we did. And the broadcasting industry were a bit snippy about us because we didn't produce quite highbrow programming, but we knew what our audience was. We were going for a younger audience, a non-metropolitan audience, and it was going to be an easy-to-navigate schedule, and we're going to have fun with the schedule, and we're going to create new genres, which we did. And the channel went from 0 to 6.5% share in under 4 years, and the company went from valued at nothing to £1 billion. So we created a lot of value for our shareholders. We'd created a channel that resonated with a young audience. Now, you might say that in and of itself was sort of something I was most proud of. The thing I was most proud of was the culture of that place. So we literally, when I started, there was myself, there was the then chief executive, there was the finance director, and there was the head of revenue. And we said, we're going to build a company which is, you know, which is where would be the company that everybody would want to work for and aspire to work for, because it's going to be fun, it's going to be open, it's going to be collaborative. We're going to do this together, and we're going to do things against all odds, but we're going to enjoy it. We're going to enjoy our work life, and we did, and the culture was wonderful, and everybody who came through that said it was the best place I ever worked. And for folks to say that, you know, that was hugely satisfying. And incredible, and very proud, because we created that. And I say we because it was we. It's never me. It's always a group of people who deliver sort of extraordinary performance, which is what we did. So that was Channel.
That's a fantastic story, because it really does seem to pinpoint or identify the twin ends. So there's fingers up at the I did it, but then there's the I want to play a place which is collaborative and glorious and no arseholes and everybody can be fun and it's glorious. I think I remember watching the opening night of Channel 5. Was it Spice Girls?
It was
magnificent. And also, I think Jonathan Pierce started commentating on
Yes,
football.
he did.
Yeah,
he did.
Amazing.
He did. Right.
So
God
thank
bless
you
you.
for that.
Yeah, I suspect half of you in the room weren't even born. But
That's true.
we won't even go there. But there are.
Indeed.
But no, it was. It's very, very funny actually. 'Cause, yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, of course, yeah.
1997. It was glorious. Labour had won.
Great year.
New
Great
Brit-
year.
yeah, it was, there's another life. What is it?
Yeah. Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Cool
on TV.
Britannia, all of that. It was great fun. Tony Blair.
Anywho, so just a brief mention of football there. Obviously, one of the things that you're most renowned for is your work with sport, and especially
We're going
with
to say films, effing and football.
yes. And especially with the development of women's football. I was wondering what you see as being some of the driving factors that have allowed for the significant growth, both in participation and audiences for women's football, and women's sport in general, over the last decade or so.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question of the audience. Hands up if you've watched any women's football recently. That's not good enough. Right, so I've got to do a sell on the rest of you. Thank you very much. Well, I'll talk about football, but I can talk about sort of women's sport in general. I'll talk about football because that's what I'm closest to and have been involved with now for the last 6 years. So women's football has always been played. Women have just the same as men, you know. We've got 2 legs, 2 arms, and we can run around and kick a ball. And that's what we have done, and we've been rather good at it. And then during the First World War, when men were packed off to fight and women stayed at home, and actually particularly the northern factories, the northern munition factories, had a lot of female football teams, and they proved really good. So good, in fact, that they were getting 50 and 60,000 audiences. I mean, sort of staggering. Dick Kerr ladies playing St. Helens. I mean, just audiences that were, I think it took sort of the best part of 100 years for those audiences to be exceeded. They did incredibly well. They did, and they were raising money, and that money went to the war effort. And then what happened? The men came back from the war, and the FA, in its wisdom, decided that women's football was far too popular, could be more popular than men's game of football, so women could no longer play on FA licensed grounds, which was pretty much most football grounds up and down the country. So that sort of stopped women's football being played at that level. So for 50 years, women's football was banned, pretty much banned on decent pitches. So we fast forward to 1972, and you know, women start playing. Well, women have always played football, but we had this big 50 years of a ban, which was sort of shocking, really. Anyway, we're 50 years again on from that. And women's football has sort of exploded onto our screens, but nothing ever explodes onto any screen without a very clear strategy behind it. And the strategy has been driven by the FA. And the FA have a commitment to grassroots football, to male and female football. It's as important for young women to play, or young girls to play sport, as it is for young boys. And they're just as good. They play games and team sports maybe slightly differently, but they're still amazing. Can be potentially, if you're a professional athlete, male or female, you're both professional athletes, and requires all of the commitment and fitness that goes with being a professional athlete. And the FA decided very consciously it was going to invest more money into grassroots football, particularly for little girls. And they had a strategy, which was we're going to make more facilities, and you always need facilities up and down the country. We're going to get funding to do that. We're going to direct some of our funds into it. And then there's going to be a pathway. So if you're good domestically, locally, there's going to be a route up to sort of the national teams, and then ultimately professional football, and then as you can see, the sort of the national team, the Lionesses. But there was like I said, a very, 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 very clearly defined strategy to get more engagement, and that was also combined with better access in schools for girls to play sport. All of that then combined with the women's game. You've got the national leagues, you've got the South and the North, and then you've got the two professional leagues were started in 2018, again by the FA, so the Women's Championship and the Women's Super League. And those two leagues were pretty good, 2018. Today, 2024, those leagues are, you can't compare the two in terms of quality. So what's really happened in the last 6-7 years. I think it's a culmination of all sorts of things, because sport, particularly women's football, is at the intersection of sort of not just sport but entertainment and culture. And you've now got a group of women who are playing professional football that now have visibility. And they have visibility partly because of that cultural change that women are now, we do have far more economic power than we ever have. We do have more visibility. There's still not total equality. Women should be paid the same as men. We are still not. But there's been a complete societal change, and women playing football is seen to be both acceptable, normal, and actually also aspirational. And getting women's football visible, getting a television deal, I think was really critical. And I think there was a couple of ignition moments, as there often are in the development of sport. So one was World Cup in Lyon, and we were in the semi-finals against America, and it was 2000. I think it was. Forgive me, I might have got my dates wrong. 2018, and the Lionesses played America, and it got something like an 11 million audience on the BBC. Wow, 11 million. It was sort of out of nowhere. And that then sparked a further surge in interest in football. I could just see it, and you might have seen it where you live, little girls, young girls going out and playing football, wanting to aspire to be what they'd seen on the telly. And that was covered on, I remember that talk was covered on the BBC. And then the Super League, the two professional leagues, we were carried on BT. So we had a deal with BT. BT Sport was only in 20% of homes. And we knew, and this was when I was chair, well, I still do chair the professional leagues, that when the broadcast rights came up, we needed to get them into more homes. So we needed a BBC deal, and we also needed a paid television deal, because that's where the money is. Sky traditionally pay well for the sporting rights that they want. And so we did a deal with the BBC and ITV that gave us the money from Sky as well as the reach from the BBC, so more eyeballs on the game. And then we had another ignition. Well, we had more ignition moments, because we were getting the women's football matches that were broadcast were getting as bigger audiences, in fact bigger than some of the EFL matches, not bigger than the Premier League matches. So there was real interest and engagement, and we could also see what was happening on social media, which was huge amount of interest in these female footballers, who are also really excellent at using social media to amplify what they're doing, their profiles, and also they have a commercial imperative to do it, because they are paid diddly squat compared to men. If I told you that globally sport attracts £450 billion in revenue. That's sponsorship, that's gate, that's broadcast revenues. Women's all women's sport globally attracts $1 billion. 0.2% of what men's sport gets. That shows an immense opportunity, which is also why you're seeing the explosion of interest in women's football, because there are more commercial partners wanting to get involved, because they can, the growth opportunity in sport which is there is in women's sport, not in men's sport. And women's football is good. It's a really good product. It can be even better, and that's what we're working on. But more money that came in from these broadcast deals allows us to invest more money into training, into the leagues, so the product becomes better, so people become more engaged. There's more opportunities to play in school. If you want to play just purely leisure local clubs, there's more access to, and there's more investment in pitches. So it's this beautiful, beautiful now sort of cycle that we're on, but there's still an immense journey ahead of us to realise our full potential. But it's come out of, the explosion has come out of very deliberate strategy, and if you can't see it, you can't be it. Massive visibility for the women's game, which has come through these broadcast deals. In fact, only just announced yesterday a new broadcast deal with Sky and the BBC, which is for, well, I'm not allowed to say how much, we'll get into trouble, but a lot more than last time, right, which allows us to invest more money in the game, and so it continues to roll out. But young women can now be footballers. They are superstars. You know, the Lionesses are superstars. They're absolute rock stars. Many of the individual players in the women's game have more followers than clubs. I mean, it's sort of immense, the engagement that these young athletes have.
That statistic is amazing. Yeah. 0.2%.
Yeah, versus 498 billion versus 1 billion. Shocking.
Staggering. And it leads on to the next question, which is, when you have got these massive amounts of investment into sport, and you see particularly like the Premier League getting enormous amounts of money, some of the lower leagues, especially sort of non-league teams, feel as if they're, despite this 420 billion, they are losing out, and there's kind of inequities, and grassroots actually suffers. From what you're saying, that sounds like it maybe isn't the case, or is it more complicated?
Well, it's a very delicate ecosystem, football, and the women's game is very cognizant. I mean, if I look at the top of the Super League, you don't want the head to get away from the bottom of the Championship, because there's such massive money at the top, not in the Women's Super League, in the Men's Premier League versus grassroots. But football is a pyramid. There's the Premier League, then there's the EFL, then there's the national leagues, and money comes from the top and gets pushed down the pyramid. Now at the bottom, always want more money from the top. And actually the Premier League do have to cascade money down, as indeed does the women's game. So the women's game, we're structured so the two professional leagues that we have is the top league, 25% of its revenues goes to the bottom league to support it. Now, you think, well, why would you do that? Because to develop a player, you don't just suddenly get, you know, a first team player. They have to have moved up in terms of, they will have moved up through the non-professional leagues into national leagues, then into the professional leagues. And we want domestic players. It's not just a question of, well, I'm going to go out and buy European players. You can do that, but you've got to have your own domestic talent. That is an absolute requirement from the governing body. So it's football does require the further down the pyramid to work. So you develop your own superstars. So if you look at, Man City, you look at any of the top Premier League clubs, they all have academies. Now, why do they have academies? Where they take a huge funnel of local kids who are, show potential, and even if only one of those academy athletes end up in their top team, it's worth running that academy for, because football is a cost. They're traded. That's part and parcel of a football P&L is the talent that you create and how you trade it as well. So it's like I said, it's a delicate ecosystem. The bottom always wants more. You look at the top and you go, how many billions does the Premier League want? We want more of it. We have the most successful league in the world, football league in the world. I mean, it sort of is extraordinary, but it's also, interestingly, why is it so successful? Why is it better than the Bundesliga? Why is it better than any other football league in the world? Because actually, I think it grew at the same time as Sky Television grew. So when Sky started, whenever it was 30 odd years ago, actually maybe even a little bit longer ago than that now, it grew when the Premier League was created, and it used that sport, that competition to build out its business, albeit revolutionised sport. Sky do a fantastic job in packaging and presenting sport, but they grew their business in tandem with the Premier League. And I always remembered when I was at Sky, and every 3 years we'd go in and bid for the rights for the next 3 years. And even when we knew there wasn't competition, Sky always invested more money, paid more money for the rights, because it wanted a better product, and it understood that a better product on screen would make it more attractive, would mean that more people would be compelled, yes, I just have to buy now my Sky subscription to get access to football.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to open up in a second to the audience, but I've got one more question for you, which is if you could only watch one sport for the rest of your life, what sport would it be?
Women's football, of course.
Of course.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's great entertainment. It's a different style of football to men's football, and you never, well, you don't in any sport, you never quite know what's coming next. Right. I would say that in women's football particularly. So it would be women's football.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mine would be women's cricket. But
yeah.
Okay, so I have been hogging Dawn most egregiously, so I would now like to offer up the possibility for anybody in the audience who may have a question. If you do, could you wait for the microphone to come to you, because these are being recorded, so it just will allow people to hear it later on. Does anybody have any questions?
I've sent them all to sleep. You're all on there. You need some sugar.
Oh, just over there.
That was a fantastic story of hard work, determination, drive, all of those really positive psychological things. My question is an obvious one. Have you and do you have self-doubts? And if so, how do you manage them?
Oh, yeah, I do all the time. Yeah, that's what drives me. One of the things that drives me. Absolutely. I always don't think I'm good enough, you know, and I always want to do my best and better. And I do feel an imposter. I honestly do feel an imposter. You know, people are really odd. You know, you're the boss and you sort of seem to know what you're doing. I mean, I seem to know what I'm doing, but reality is. So yeah, I'm very self-aware. I'm very, very, very self-aware. And I'm very critical of myself, which is sort of a bit daft. Well, not a bit daft, I mean, at my age, but it sort of is. And it's just part and parcel of me. I've always felt slightly the outsider. In everything I've done, even when I'm an insider, I've always felt slightly the outsider. But that tension, I think, makes me better and makes me more aware. I don't take anything for granted. I don't do airs and graces. You know, I might have a title, but it means nothing. It means nothing. You know, it really does. I mean, you've got influence, but I don't think, oh, I'm CEO of this, or I don't know, all right, you know, no, you know, crikey, all this could fall apart. And I'm also very driven. I think, you know, life, you know, is as long as or short as, you know, we don't know. None of us know what's going to happen in 5 minutes' time. You can only ever live in the moment. So I always try and be sort of the best I can be in that moment. And I don't mean for this to sound, it might sound a bit wanky or a bit great. It's not meant to be. It's just sort of my motivation, which is just me. It says, why can't you be the best version of yourself all the time? You should be. You should be right. You know, and I'll tell you one thing I can't stand when somebody says, oh, that's good enough. I hate good enough. Why don't you do your best all the time? Because the difference between the two is not that profound to do. So, sorry, I probably feel as if I'm in a therapy session here. So yes, I do. Absolutely, I do. And I think most people would, if they're being honest. And if not, you probably fall into my arsehole category. But
got a question just here.
Yeah, so like looking back on your experiences throughout media and in sports and everything in the amazing career that you've led, what would you say is the single most important thing that you've learned over your career?
Single most important thing I've learned? That's a really good question, actually. The single most important thing I've learned? Probably, actually, it's all about people. It's all about the relationships you form. It's all about how you show up. It's not even necessarily what you do or how good you are at what you specifically do. It's how you show up. How are you as a person in that organisation, and what you do. So it's about sort of, it's sort of slightly linked to the answer earlier about being sort of your authentic, comfortable, honest self.
Okay, thank you. And up there, there's a question, I think. Oh, sorry. There's one there and then one up there.
Okay, I have a question to ask you. So what are some of the difficulties you have faced while working, and how did you overcome those obstacles?
Gosh, difficulties. Oh, you're sitting comfortably. I could go on for hours. Difficulties. I don't know that it was a... Well, sort of early in my career, I was promoted very, very, very quickly. And that was... It meant I was sort of slightly set apart. Now, why was I promoted very, very quickly? It was a sort of circumstance and timing. So I was in ITV in the 80s. Anybody, I don't expect, well, some of you, when I look at this audience, might be watching Rivals on television at the moment. Watching Rivals, Jilly Cooper? Anybody watching it? God, you're showing good taste. Well, I think, yes, but no, I don't want to admit it's guilty secret. Put my hand up. Okay, Rivals is about bidding it's about an ITV regional franchise in the 80s. It's sexist, it's racist, it's sexual, it's abusive. It's quite fun, and but it reflected a real time. And actually, being a female in that environment was quite hard, because you were there to basically have the piss ripped out of you, and to be the butt of quite a lot of sort of, to be honest, stuff that for today you'd be sacked on the spot for. And that was quite difficult to be challenged with all of that. And you could have quite easily sort of melted and had a breakdown because of it, because it was relentless in his abuse. But I found that quite hard, and how I dealt with it was, I come from a boys' school, so I kept thinking, you've been at a boys' school, and that was a pretty horrible experience, but you got through it, so you give as good as you get. So I put on a full metal jacket, and whatever was thrown at me, I threw back twice as hard, and that's how I dealt with it. But it was hard because it wasn't me, but I knew to get on, I probably had to play the game a little bit, which is what I did. But that was really the hardest, really, really very hard. And I've always been very conscious of that, sort of going forward when I've been in positions of influence, of trying to make the environment as best as it can be, as open as it can be, to get the best out of team members. But that was it. Basically, I think any female in a predominantly male environment in the 80s would have had a very tough time. Looking in this room, I can see a few people nodding. Maybe that's because your mum said that, but there we are.
Thank you. There's somebody up there. Yep.
Thank you. Can I ask, what do you want to do for Edge Hill now that you've been appointed as Chancellor?
That's a very good question. What do I want to do for Edge Hill? What can you do? Not what can we do. I want to do what Edge Hill wants me to do. So, and John and Linda and Liam know this. When I was approached to be the Chancellor, I was very chuffed, a little bit bemused. Oh, right, that's lovely. But and then thought, well, how did you get to me? And we talked about that. And what I said was, I'm just here as a resource and an advocate. I'm here to be a cheerleader for this extraordinary place, and it is. And it plays to all the things that I believe in and care about. So it's back to being an advocate. It's back to being, I have a spider's web, and if I can help and connect folks, I will. And I hope that I sort of represent the ethos of this extraordinary place as well. So both touch the history and in terms of looking forward and what it's trying to achieve. So, thank you.
Hello, I just wanted to say thank you for talking. I thought it was very interesting. I just want to touch on, you said something earlier. When it comes to networking, when starting to do networking, what do you think is important to do? Obviously, talking to people, but is there a specific group of people that you should look for, if you get what I mean?
Sorry?
A specific group of people you should look for, like...
Well, it's a good question. So you can do it two ways. You can set up your own networks, or you can go find networks that you think you should be part of. What I would say to each and every one of you is, and it's interesting, is if you ask people for help or advice, most people will say yes, because they like to help. They like to help. So if you think, oh, this person could potentially give me the benefit of their wisdom or experience, I want to reach out and just see how they react. And you can literally, you can probably contact anybody in the country. Where there's a will, there's a way. You work out how you can get some. So have confidence to reach out and ask somebody for help and explain why you want help. And then they will help you, or if they say, well, I can't help you, but I'll connect you with somebody else. You're starting to build a network. You start to build a network. Never underestimate the willingness of people to help other people, because it makes them feel good, responding. I look at my inbox, and I can guarantee every day Jan will say, oh, another half a dozen people who want you to do X, Y, and Z. And I go, well, can we help? Because we should help. When you try, I always say to my kids, when they were little, when I used to ask them a question, their instant response used to be no. And I said, I'm going to tell you a secret, kids. If you want to get on in life, try and say yes more often than say no, because actually you get far better outcomes. So work out where you want to build a set of experiences, where the gaps are in your experience, where do you go to fill them, and just reach out and and put like-minded people together. But go to, for those of you, for example, and I don't know, but I'm sure they do, sort of British Academy of Film and Television or the Royal Television Society will have student networks. Reach out to those. Look for established bodies if you want to get into the theatre. There will be points that you can, whether they're associations or whatever, you could join. And then actively use the opportunities that are given as a result. But just ask, work, like-minded people together, join as many things as you can.
Thank you. I think we're nearly at the end. Is there any other question that anybody has? And
there's cake outside, I think.
There is cake outside. What I'd like to do then is to obviously thank you for a fantastic discussion where your grace, good humour and empathy shone through, but also the tenacity and the requirement to kind of work hard and have you. And all I can say is, and I hope that people in the audience agree, we are very lucky to have you as our Chancellor.
Oh, thank you. I'm very lucky to be here.